In today's video, I will show you 4 ways to start your thread. And the good news is they all work for stitching with both 2 strands and 1 strand of floss. Hi, my name is Marie and this is the Caterpillar Cross Stitch channel. If you're new here, welcome. The channel is all about cross stitching and tutorials, so remember to hit like and subscribe to never miss a new tutorial from us. Remember to also follow us on Facebook and Instagram for even more stitchy inspiration. This video is all about various methods of starting your thread. If you've been here a while, you know that I don't really believe in one size fits all, so there's some good pros and cons coming your way. Let's get stitching. Number 1, a knot. Pretty much the standard in the world of embroidery, but frowned upon in cross stitch. Starting your stitching with a knot is pretty much a Marmite moment for many. First, let's look at the best way to knot the thread. It's called a quilter's knot. Take your needle in one hand, place it against your index finger, trapping the end of the thread in between the needle and the skin. Start wrapping the thread around. I usually do 2 turns. The more turns you do, the bigger will the resulting knot be. Then, while holding on to the wrapped thread, pull your needle through and continue pulling it until the end of the thread. And voila, here's your quilter's knot. I would then recommend to cut the end quite close to the knot to prevent bringing any fluff to the top of the fabric once you've started stitching. Then you just bring the needle through the fabric where you need to start and get stitching. The biggest pro of this method is that it's a super quick way to start your thread. No fuss, but there are some strong cons, so let's look at them. Number 1, the knot is very rarely big enough to withstand any pressure. So if you pull just a tad, it will escape the fabric easily. And even more importantly, number 2, if you want to prevent the knot going through fabric and start making bigger knots that stay put, these knots will create lumps that can be pretty visible once you go to frame your piece, especially if there's many knots in one place. It takes such a long time to finish our piece that it would be a shame to spoil them with lumps. Let's look at different ways then, shall we? Number 2, a loop start. Pretty much a universally loved way of starting thread. I'll show you how to make it work for both 2 threads and 1 thread. For 2 threads, take a long piece of thread, twice the size of your preferred stitching length, and fold it in half. Thread the needle with the loose ends and you have a loop at the end. Bring your needle through the fabric and the loop, tighten it a bit, and you're good to go. There's a way to do this from the front of the fabric so you don't have to keep on turning your hoop. Push your needle through the fabric from the top of the project and bring it back up in the opposite corner, leaving a bit of the loop up. Then bring your needle through the loop, tighten it a bit, and then push your needle through the first hole again and pull gently. This will pull the loop to the back of the fabric and you're good to go. Only a few minor cons to this method. Be careful when pulling at the thread because it can distort your fabric, especially if it's not aida. And if you don't tighten the loop, the first stitch can be a bit fluffy and untidy. So you might need a bit of practice to get the balance just right. Other than that, it's a perfect method for starting a thread. For a single thread, push your needle through the fabric in a corner that would usually be your top stitch and leave about 1 inch or 2 of the thread visible and catch it with your thumb or finger. Then bring your needle through where you would normally start a bottom stitch and push it back again, leaving a little loop on the top of the fabric. Then bring your needle through the opposite corner and through the loop, tighten it a bit, and just like in the previous method, push your needle through the first hole again and pull it until the loop disappears at the back of the fabric. Finish the full stitch, and when you go through the hole with the tail, try to knowingly pierce that tail with your needle to secure it even further. Cut the tail off and you're done. There's only one con for this single strand loop method, that it can sometimes come undone, especially on non-aida fabrics or with silkier threads that have less traction than cotton DMCs. That's why I have mentioned that you should try to pierce that tail before cutting it off to secure it a bit more. Number 3, waist away knot. Start your thread with Quilters Knot and then bring your needle through the fabric at least 4 to 5 stitches away from where your first stitch will be. Then stitch as usual, and while doing that, you are stitching over the thread on the back of the fabric and therefore securing that thread. Then just cut off the knot, hence the name waist away knot. There is one really important thing to keep in mind. In order for this method to work, you need to run thread across the waist away thread on the back of the fabric. That's sometimes easier said than done. You need to plan where you place your waist away knot to make sure your thread in the back doesn't just miss it. Let me show you some frequent mistakes. Number 1 is placing your waist away knot on the wrong side of your stitch where you will not be stitching. Easily done when not paying attention. And number 2, your stitches on the back of the fabric are not covering the waist away thread. So if I stitch the Danish method, my thread on the back is vertical, therefore running over the waist away thread. Perfect. But if I stitch with a Victorian stitch, the thread lines on the back are horizontal. That makes catching the waist away thread really difficult, and sometimes it misses it altogether. This can be solved by leaving the waist away thread really long, and once the knot is cut, thread your needle with it and weave it on the back of your project. The cons of this method, for me, are that there's a lot of planning involved and it does use up a lot more thread than all the other ways to start your thread. So especially when stitching with more expensive floss, this method is just not worth it for me personally. It also will only work when you have a sufficient amount of stitches to make, so it wouldn't work for a single confetti stitch, for example. On the other hand, it is excellent for black work, where you can use the method of threading the needle with the waist away thread and weave it on the back of the fabric. It is also very suitable for stitching full coverage pieces. Number 4, a pin stitch. Sometimes considered to be the most difficult, but I promise it's super easy and my personal go-to when I can't do a loop start. Let's see how it's done. So push your needle through the fabric in a corner that would usually be your top stitch again, and leave about 1 inch or 2 of the thread visible and catch it with your thumb or finger. Then bring your needle up through the middle of the square. It works really well on even weave and linen, but I do this all the time with Aida too. And then you go through the top right corner, bring back up in the bottom left corner, and then back through the middle of the fabric again. Pull gently on the thread to secure. When doing this, try to pierce the thread in the middle with your needle for even more secure starting stitch. Finish your cross, cut the tail, and you're good to continue stitching. This method is simply excellent for both 2 and single strand stitching and is super secure. The only con, in fact, I can think of is that it's a bit difficult to frog if you do need to, because it is that secure. So, those are all the ways of starting a thread I've learned and regularly use. I hope it was useful to you and that you've learned a thing or two. I use all of them, depending on the situation, the project I work on, the fabric and thread that I'm currently using. Do you have any questions, or do you have any other tip of starting a thread? Please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know. You can practice your thread starting skills on a wide range of kits and patterns available on our website www.caterpillarcrossstitch.com. And if you haven't already, sign up to our newsletter, aka VIP Stitch Club. You'll get a 10% discount on your first order and a PDF with 8 free patterns delivered to your inbox. If you love the cross-stitching community and sharing your progress, consider joining our Facebook group with almost 15,000 stitches. And that is it from us at Caterpillar Cross Stitch today. I hope you have a fantastic week and see you next Monday.